Hello YouTube viewers, welcome to my show Camera Tuesday. In today's episode, we're going to take a closer look at serial digital interface, a very crucial piece of equipment for any person dealing with cameras. So first you have to understand, most of you know about HDMI output. Now, okay, HDMI, it is quite useful, you have been using it, you have been running video recorder out of it, then what's the problem? It works, it's available, then what's the problem? Now first thing you have to understand, HDMI is very complex. It's what we classify as high definition multimedia interface. It's very complex. It has a lot of channels and data points. Now that also means it requires what we call handshake. Basically your receiver or HDMI output must talk with the receiving end, whatever it may be it TV, be it console, and come up with a conclusion that we're gonna work together. If it does not, you can have a scenario where you have perfectly working PlayStation, you can have a scenario where you have perfectly working TV, but both of them may not work because they will say this content requires hd-sdi for playback, hd-sdi is not supported by your HDMI connection, the content requires a different version and all that. So because of that handshake, that adds an extra layer of complexity, that you can have a scenario where it's expecting something another than what your data point is sending. So this is very complex and the handshake is very unreliable. Now the cable itself, the whatever it's carrying the data, is very complex. Now in terms of complexity, you don't care about it, but you care about the cost. It is very expensive. And on top of that, even though the cable is expensive, it does not mean it can run for very long. Basically you cannot have a scenario where, okay, I'm gonna have a camera, let's say one end of a stadium, and record on the other end. Yeah, that's not happening. So that's also an issue. On top of that, it does not have a locking mechanism. So basically you put it in a camera and that's it. Minor tuck can pull it out. Now you might be like, I can do this or that. Here's the deal, you should not need to do that. So this creates a problem. Even though we have three interfaces where you have full HDMI, mini HDMI and micro HDMI, the fact that it requires freaking 19 cables, like if you think Ethernet cables are complex, try opening these up. So these have 19 cables, independent cable running through it. It's very complex. It does not run for very long distances and does not have a locking mechanism. So basically it can be pulled out even with a minor snug. And on top of that, it is a consumer grade product, so it has a lot of copyright protection but does not have many other things that people would want. So this is the problem. It does not run for very long, it's very expensive, it does not have a locking mechanism, and it's a consumer grade, it breaks way too easily. So these are the problem with HDMI. That's why we needed something better. Now then SDI, basically serial digital interface, comes to our rescue. Now you have to understand, SDI is much older than HDMI. It has been in production for very long time, and it's basically people who are doing broadcasting, basically TV news channel or things of that nature, they come up with this. And professional, it's like every aspect of it, from the cable to connector to data interface to protocols, everything is built with professional in mind. Now what does that translate to? Like what does that mean? Basically, if you have seen this sort of cable, that old cable TV that you used to have, or even this itself is what's connecting your dish TV to your basically set-top box. So this is what we call coaxial cable. Now this is very cheap. This you can buy like for cost of 10 foot of HDMI cable, you can buy 100 feet of this. So understand, this is ludicrously cheap. This is inherently cheap, simple, widely accessible. So that makes a very big difference. The cable is cheap for long runs. And on top of that, this also comes with what we call BNC connector. Now this connector can be found with other things also, but this is a locking connector. You put it in, rotate it, now it will not come off. Now of course, unless you like yank it, it's just that it gives you a peace of mind that accidentally it won't come off. Like if it comes off, that means either somebody unlocked it and then pulled it off, or somebody applied excessive force. So that gives you an extra peace of mind that it's locked, and there is no handshake requirement. Because this equipment is a professional equipment, you can have a scenario where you have freaking 10 cameras, 20 recorder systems, 50 broadcasting setups. You can have that. Like if you've seen any live cricket match, you must know like there are many channels that are doing any reading data from the same camera view. How the heck that can happen? Because of SDI. And it is make it yourself. Basically, let's say you have a scenario, let's say you created a studio and you're like, hey, I need 40 feet of cable, but let's say the nearest size that is available, that is 50 feet. 10 feet of extra wire would be a mess for you. Let's say you want a clean, elegant set. You can make it yourself. This cable, this port, all these are available and they are cheap also. And I have provided the link down below how people make the cable themselves. Ideally, in the starting, I would urge you to buy them, but once you get experienced enough, you can build it yourself. Like, it's much easier than what we call Ethernet. If you can make Ethernet port, this is also easy. So understand, and if you see a broadcaster like this where you have a cameraman, it has like freaking 4 BNC connector, you must understand there are many reasons for this. There are layers upon layers of redundancy also. So even if one cable falls off, you won't even know anything. And even if, like, let's say 3 falls off, it will still work. So every aspect of it is built with a professional in mind. So that's the SDI aspect. It has a locking system, it is very cheap, and it does not have any technical hoo-ha. It does not require handshake, it just works. There is no encryption in this. So understand, if somebody is transmitting, let's say, video over this, do not expect any encryption on that. So then question becomes, okay, it's a bit better than HDMI, then what can it do that only this can do, not HDMI? You have to understand, this allows camera control. Now this is unique. Even though in principle HDMI should be able to do that, nobody has done it yet. However, SDI from day one was built for that, because many times you have what we call the control room where people are there and you have cameraman and you have a studio. Now cameraman is only there to rotate the camera. It's not there to do anything other than that. It's not even there to focus it. So either there will be autofocus or there will be a independent focus puller whose job would be just to do the focusing. So who controls the white balance, who controls the shutter, who controls the gain setting, basically ISO for them, or whatever you need to do, or who directs the cameraman, hey, you need to focus on this contestant, or you need to focus on this judge where you have live setup. That can be done using these puppies. And on top of that, it allows you camera control. It has feedback to the operator. Basically you can have basically headset and you can do talkback. This is what we call talkback. And then this also allows for what we call video switches. Like if you try to mix 5 to 10 audio system, you buy audio mixer. For video, that is the same. You buy video mixer like this. Now here's the deal. You can't have video mixer that has like freaking 20 wires per port. It simply would not work. So SDI, because it inherently only has one cable, you can have a scenario like this Sony example that I'm giving you, video mixer. It has 30 input. You can like feed in 30 cameras into this. And it's not that it's only limited to broadcast industry. It's also used by movie industry. As you can see, this is Alexa Mini from RE, and this is Blackmagic. All of them also use it. So you can see in Blackmagic case, because they have a lot more control with the software, they can allow you much fine-tuned control. Basically you can use this as a webcam, have the SDI come into your computer and control everything about the camera, how the image looks, how is the sharpness, how is everything. You can control that very thoroughly, very easily while the camera is recording. There is no hoo-ha there. While the camera is recording, it will allow you to change everything. And if you have a focus puller basically in your lens, it will allow you to do that. If you have a focus motor that allows you to zoom also, basically change your millimeter, it will allow you to do that using SDI itself. Now these things haven't been done with HDMI. As of now, you can't go and buy a HDMI system that will allow you to do that. Even though HDMI has 20 pins, even though it's built as an interface, not that as output or input, it cannot do that. It wasn't built that way. So this is why people use SDI. Like there are certain things only SDI can do. You cannot talk to your cameraman using HDMI. You can talk with this. You can't buy a system where you have like 30 or 40 HDMI inputs. That's just simply not there. And be mindful, there are standards of this also. Even though cable will remain the same, the standards will change. Basically how we went from SATA to SATA 2 to SATA 3. It's like that. But of course you need higher quality cable. If the cable is very impure, what we call oxidized cable, the quality of connection would be very weak. So you have basically old SDI, which used to be used in very old days. Then we have HD-SDI. Then we got, if you want good quality video, you must go to 3G. 3G simply specifies how many gigabytes per second, small b. Then you have 6G. If you want 4K 30 frame per second, you must have 6G. Now if you want 4K 60 frame per second, you must have 12G. Now 12G is a bit rare as of now, is not every camera has that. Even the Blackmagic that I'm showing you, even though it can transfer using SDI, it can only do 4K 30 frame per second. Now you can buy handycams, professional camera equipment that can do basically 12G SDI. So this is what it is. Basically, if you are in a production environment like a TV studio or Big Boss or things of that nature, even in Big Boss or Big Brother in your country, they have cameras, right, that can pan, tilt, zoom and all that. That is only happening because of SDI. Because people, you might think it can be done over Ethernet, and Ethernet has the benefit of what we call power over Ethernet. So you have only one cable. The problem is Ethernet does not have enough bandwidth. These puppy, basically SDI has enough bandwidth to do that. So this is why we use it. This is why your Red Epic to your Canon C200 to freaking Alexa Mini to like broadcast cameras to Blackmagic, everybody has SDI. SDI is a whole different level of thing. In production, you can't bypass this. If you want to do live telecast and you want to do it reliably without pulling your hair out, and if you have multi-camera setup, SDI is the only option. If you try to do this with 4 cameras using HDMI, it's not that you can't do that or there is no equipment, it's just you're gonna pull your hair out. So is this amazing? Then is there any consequence to that? Absolutely. Now the first consequence is, because it's not mass marketed to the large audience, it's never cheap. Like HDMI is cheap simply because it's mass produced. Even though it's more expensive thing, it's just produced in billions, where you have SDI equipments that are produced in hundreds of thousands. So that's why there is inherent cost to it. Now there are multiple generations, as I already told you, but that creates a consequence where you can have a scenario where the 12G SDI that you can buy, that is the highest right now, it cannot transmit 8K. And you must be familiar with the fact that there are many 8K film cameras. So how the heck you gonna transmit over that? Now the biggest problem with SDI, it's basically half stop. If you are working in a home studio and you're like, HDMI is more than capable of handling your distance, but if you are doing a newsroom, SDI can take care of it. Now imagine doing that in a football stadium. Your cable run can be very easily reach upwards of 1 or 2 kilometers, simply because you will have like multiple routes, multiple paths. Things can get complicated. So in those sort of scenario, SDI creates a problem where even though it can go very far, it cannot go far enough. So in the future, not in the future as in like in the 100 years from now, right now already you can buy places and equipments, and people who are doing this is basically they're converting SDI into fiber. Because fiber inherently, without any boosting, without anything, just you have fiber coming out from this, going to another fiber receiver, you can easily, on a normal fiber cable, not something super fancy, you can easily do 5 to 10 kilometers. That is more than enough. That is like, you can handle like entire NASA building, you can do that, the Boeing building that is so huge, it has clouds of its own. In those sort of environment, optical will replace it. And as of now, because the 24, basically right now I told you that 12G is the highest standard, some people are already working on 12G standard, but fiber already solves all those problems, because fiber can be changed much more easily and it is much more commercial product. So sooner or later fiber will replace this. Now even though you can do so many things like video, audio, talkback, tally light. Now if you have seen any kind of news anchoring show, how do you think the anchors know where to look? Basically every camera has a light, red bulb, big red bulb, that tells them it's on or not. So that is what we call tally light. Basically the control room will send a signal, okay, this camera will be on. So the first signal will come to the cameraman and he will point it out. It's like, okay, I'm ready. Then the signal will come on top of a blinking signal. That blinking signal will notify the basically whoever is looking. It's like, let's say camera is there, that will start blinking. I'm like, okay, now I have to look there. The moment I look there, the cameraman will trigger it, or the person sitting in the control room will trigger it. Then you have gain, basically ISO. Then you have details, basically how much sharpness you have. Shutter, of course, like if person starts to move a lot of action, they will change the shutter speed. Zoom, that is an advanced function, not available in every lens. Focus, obviously. And then you have iris, basically aperture. And then you have pedestal. This is advanced function that I do not. Color balance, obviously. Contrast, hue, saturation, everything can be controlled independently. However, it does come with a consequence. Even though all these things can be done, you need 2 independent cable. It's not that one big cable is there. there. You need two independent cable to do this. SDI is just basically it has a pathway kind of structure. You have input and output, so that's why every camera that is good enough will always have SDI in and SDI out. Now, on top of that, because it was built for broadcast industry, it was not built for quality. It was built for redundancy, it was built for like a quick operation, but it was not built for quality. So that created a problem that right now, as I talk to you, the common standard is 422, not 444, not 12-bit. You can't do that. Like you can't do 4444. Even though there are many cameras right now, including Blackmagic cameras, including Red Apex and Alexa Mary, that can do 4444, basically 12-bit recording. You can't transmit that using SDI. It's not built for that, because in broadcasting industry there is no need for that. Like a good 4K video recording that you can do with 420, which is basically YouTube, is more than good enough. And you have to understand, even if let's say they are doing camera work, it will be compressed once it goes to the satellite, once it goes to the distribution network. So there is no point in them to build something like amazing. So that is why in future this will be replaced with optical, and optical has much more leeway. So this was my presentation on SDI. I hope you liked it or learned from it. In that case, please leave a like. Click the ad shown in this video. That will directly help me. If you didn't like it, don't worry about it. You can press dislike button twice to show me your extra disappointment. And I would urge you to leave a comment because I reply to all of them. Please subscribe. Press the bell icon if you're free. And as always, thanks for watching.